7. A short story written and read by Beccy Lloyd. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 small stones lined up in a neat row on the kitchen table. 7 stones for 7 unusually small men. They would make excellent missiles, she thought, if only I was handy with a slingshot. But no, not today. Snow White would warm the stones for warming 7 beds. Hadn't they been kind to her after all? Open-handedly taking her in when she had nowhere else to go, and cheerfully looking after her when she needed it most. Woe is she. For now, so she is told, she will make it her duty, her purpose, her pleasure, to look after them. Snow White shuddered at a growing sense of unease with her decision. This morning she had already cooked 7 breakfasts, washed 7 sets of work clothes, and trimmed and oiled 7 beards before they set off to work. With the rest of her day she would clean the house, make the supper, and warm these stones on the fire as she readied to warm their beds. With her mind on more metaphoric frying pans and fires, Snow White set about sweeping the little house right through. As she opened the door to sweep the dust outside, she swept right into an old woman, who appeared to have been watching her for some time. This was surprising, as Snow White was under the impression she was miles from anywhere, with no access to any main roads. "Good morning," the woman smiled. Snow White recoiled, a classic victim of the media's tendency towards the demonisation of middle-aged women. Bemused by Snow White's lack of reply, the not actually very old but older than Snow White woman said thoughtfully, "That looks like hard work. Fancy a snack?" and proffered a shiny red apple from her foraging basket that looked as though it could be nothing short of the tastiest apple in the world. Snow White, her tendency to optimistic trust at an especially low ebb, considered the offer. But she was hungry, and the apple did look so good. She thanked the older woman, who lingered perhaps a little longer than she should, overhanding the apple ceremoniously to the pale-skinned, dark-haired girl, with the hint of nervous tension in her eyes. Sometimes people need a little prompting to ask for help, thought the forager, as she wondered how her young companion came to be in the woods, in the house of 7 men she strongly suspected to be of dubious repute. Snow White propped her broom against the side of the house and took a seat on the step. The house was nestled in a woodland clearing, and on a day like today the sun dappled the ground through the leafy canopy. Snow White laughed out loud at a squirrel twitching its nose at her and held out the apple to see if it would come closer. The squirrel shot back up the nearest tree. It was scared of something. Snow White, obviously. Wild squirrels don't hang around if you make a noise. Neither did the old woman. She was a developer, here to assess the likelihood of a successful planning application on the land, under the guise of being just out for a bit of a walk, if anyone asked. She'd seen what she came to see, and this wasn't shaping up to be much of a conversation. Anyway, who was she to interfere in this girl's life? Making her way back in the direction of where she parked the car, the older woman turned briefly for a last look at the potential of the site, just as Snow White opened wide and took a big bite of the apple. In the next moment, Snow White fell to the floor, twitching and writhing on the doorstep of the little house. A few seconds more, and Snow White lay still. It all happened so fast, it seemed there was nothing anyone could do. The older woman, horrified, backed unsteadily away into the trees and disappeared. She simply couldn't get involved. The girl must have an allergy or something. Blame culture was all too prevalent these days. She hoped to goodness no one had seen her there. Snow White's corpse guarded the house like a giant statue all that long day. The squirrel popped back to pinch the rest of the apple. Waste not, want not. When the men came home, it was far too late to revive the girl with the blood-red lips who had wandered unexpectedly into their home, desperate enough to trade domestic enslavement for somewhere to hide. They mourned over her lost potential there on their doorstep, cursing themselves for leaving her alone, and arguing over the huge inconvenience of being left with a body to dispose of. Was it a lucky escape for poor Snow White? Would the developer ever sleep soundly again? Who were those men, and what does anyone really know about them? What could have happened to Snow White that brought her here? Was no one looking for her? Why did no one ever tell her to chew her food? Would the planning application be successful? And would they find a corpse when the excavations began?